picture this. You walk into a room. It could be a really chaotic house party, a networking event where you don't know a single soul, or maybe a boardroom right before a merger completely falls apart.
Right. There's noise everywhere.
Exactly. People are talking over each other, they're checking their phones, shifting their weight, just generally looking for an exit. It's frantic.
The usual modern chaos. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with that vibe.
We really are.
Yeah.
But then you spot one person, and they aren't the loudest. They aren't waving their arms around to get attention. Honestly, they might not even be speaking at all.
But for some reason, the entire room seems to orbit around them.
Yes, your eyes just stick to them. You completely ignore the loud guy in the corner, and you focus entirely on the quiet one.
It feels magnetic.
It does, and usually we just write that off as magic, right?
Yeah.
They just have the X factor, they were born with charisma. But today we are going to completely dismantle that idea. We're taking magic out of the equation.
We are, because according to the stack of research we're looking at today, and it is a very deep stack, that magnetism isn't magic at all. It's a biological mechanism.
It's literally a formula. We're calling it high definition presence. And what I love about this deep dive is that we aren't just giving the usual advice about being confident.
No, definitely not.
We're getting into the biology of the vagus nerve, the actual physics of microemotions, and techniques used by elite actors, mentalists, and hostage negotiators.
It gets surprisingly technical. It really comes down to a specific ratio that the sources identify, which is the ratio of absolute stillness to microemotion.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We're going to prove that you can manufacture this presence. We'll look at the biology, dive into the dark arts of how actors like Mads Mikkelsen use this to terrify us, and then we're going to apply it.
Because we have a master protocol here that breaks down how to use this in high-stakes negotiations, and the most high-stakes negotiation of all, I suppose, which is dating.
Oh, that dating section is wild. But let's start right at the beginning. The core concept here is this tension between two states. The sources call them the climb and the drop.
Right, think of it like a roller coaster or a horror movie, or even a great piece of electronic music. You need the tension before the release.
The silence before the bass drop.
Exactly. But in body language, the climb is your baseline. And for high-definition presence, that baseline has to be absolute stillness. The sources talk about lowering the noise floor of the body.
I really love that audio engineering analogy, lowering the noise floor. Because when I think of trying to be charismatic, I usually think about adding things. Power posing, big smiles, lots of expressive hand gestures.
That the research says we need to subtract.
Massive subtraction.
Totally. Think about the average person in a stressful situation. They are constantly vibrating with noise. We tap our feet, we blink way too fast, scratch our noses, we nod along while someone talks just to be polite. We all do. But all of that is interference. It tells the other person's brain that you are reactive or maybe even anxious. You are basically broadcasting static.
So the climb is about eliminating all of that static.
Completely. When you achieve that stillness, what the master protocol actually calls isometric neutrality, you become a blank canvas. You are energized but perfectly complete.
And that sets up the drop.
Yes, because you are so incredibly still, when you finally do move, even if it's just a fraction of a millimeter, it hits the observer like a shockwave.
Which is the contrast is just so high.
Precisely. It's the signal-to-noise ratio. If a room is dead silent, a pin drop sounds like a cannon. If a room is loud, you can scream and literally no one hears you. We want to be the pin drop.
Okay, but sitting perfectly still is a lot harder than it sounds. I mean, I'm trying to do it right now and I immediately want to fix my headphones or take a sip of water. It's honestly uncomfortable.
And that is the biological hurdle. You can't just act still, you have to physically be calm inside. Which brings us to the biology stack we reviewed on heart rate variability and the vagus nerve.
This part really surprised me. I always thought charisma was just a mindset thing.
Yeah.
But the sources from Cedars-Sinai and Light on Anxiety link it directly to HRV. Break that down for us. What exactly is heart rate variability?
So most people think a steady heart rate is a good thing, like a metronome, just boom, boom, boom. But a healthy charismatic nervous system is actually highly variable.
Meaning the time between beats changes.
Exactly. The time between your heartbeats changes constantly based on what your body needs in that exact millisecond. High variability means flexibility.
So we actually want high variability.
Yes, it means your nervous system can switch between fight or flight and rest and digest instantly. It's like comparing a jazz drummer to a drum machine.
The jazz drummer can adapt to the band.
Exactly. But if you have low HRV, you are stuck in stress mode. You're rigid. And when you're rigid internally, you leak those microfidgets externally.
You're just vibrating with anxiety and a leaky noise.
Right. So to get that high-definition stillness, you have to activate the vagus nerve. It's the biological superhighway connecting your brain, heart, and gut. Activating it signals safety to your entire body.
Okay, how do we hack that? Because I obviously can't just tell my heart to be more variable.
You hack it through safety signals. Deep diaphragmatic breathing is the fastest way. Cold water exposure helps over the long term. But the master protocol suggests a very specific training drill called the Statue of Salt.
I love the name of this. It sounds biblical and honestly a little punishing.
It is pretty intense. You just sit or stand for 10 minutes. And the goal isn't just to not move. The goal is to observe the urge to move, that random itch on your arm, the sudden need to shift your weight, and you just completely crush it.
You let the urge rise up and pass without giving in.
Yes. You are training your nervous system to tolerate the noise without reacting. You're building a gap between stimulus and response. And here's why that matters so much for the person watching you.
Okay, why?
When you are that still, you actually suppress the amygdala, the fear center in the observer's brain.
Wait, really? My physical stillness actively calms them down.
It disarms them completely. Their brain stops scanning you for threats because you aren't broadcasting any erratic nervous signals. They switch into what neurologists call the default mode network.
Meaning they become hypersensitive to me.
Yes, they are literally waiting for your next move.
You've captivated them biologically. You've lowered the noise floor to zero.
You've built the climb, and now you are ready for the drop.
Let's get into the drop. We've established this baseline of stillness, now we finally move. But the sources keep emphasizing micro motions. We're definitely not talking about big theatrical gestures here.
No big gestures are low definition. They are way too broad. We want high definition. This all connects to the mirror neuron system.
Mirror neurons. Those are the things that make me cringe physically when I see someone else stub their toe right.
That's the system. Your brain simulates their experience so you can understand it. Now imagine you are looking at someone. Your mirror neurons are firing this wave.
That person makes a huge sweeping gesture.
It's clumsy. It's just too much data at once. It's noise again. But if they make a tiny movement like a millimetric tilt of the chin or a very slight flaring of the nostrils, your brain has to work hard to catch it.
We'll zoom in.
Exactly. The observer feels that tiny movement intensely because it stands out so sharply against the background of stillness.
The sources brought up Paul Ekman here. He's the researcher who first discovered microexpressions. And the story of how he found them is tragic, but so fascinating.
It really is. He was studying a film of a psychiatric patient named Mary. She had been hospitalized for severe depression. And in the film, she was having a session with her doctors telling them she felt great.
She wanted a weekend pass to go home.
Right. She was smiling, laughing, looking totally normal and cured.
And the doctors completely believed her.
They did. They gave her the pass. And tragically, she attempted suicide. Ekman went back to that exact film to figure out what the doctors missed. He watched it in slow motion, frame by frame.
And he found it in just 2 frames of film.
2 frames. That is about 1/25th of a second. Right before she smiled, there was a flash of absolute intense anguish. It happened so fast, the conscious brain completely missed it, but the camera caught it.
That is terrifying. But it proves that the body leaks the truth even when we try our hardest to hide it.
It's literally called leakage in the field. Now, Mary was trying to hide her emotion, but high-definition communicators use this mechanism intentionally.
They simulate that leakage to signal intent.
Yes, because they know a micro-expression hits the viewer's subconscious much harder than a scream.
Which brings us to the actors. The source material talks a lot about Mads Mikkelsen. And if you have seen him play Hannibal Lecter, you know exactly what this looks like.
He is the absolute master of this technique. He is almost reptile-like in his stillness.
Predatory stillness is what the notes called it.
That is the perfect description. He doesn't run around screaming to show he is a dangerous character. He just sits there, and then he will do a tiny tightening of the jaw muscle, or narrow his eyes by a fraction of a millimeter.
And because his background noise is at 0, that tiny signal just screams lethal intent.
It triggers a primal flight response in the viewer. It's scary efficient.
Mark Rylance in Bridge of Spies was another great example.
Oh, definitely. He plays a captured spy who might be executed, and he is practically motionless for the entire movie. But the camera catches these tiny flickers of resignation or amusement. It is riveting. He projects vast emotion without acting in the traditional sense.
It reminds me of the close-up magician they mentioned, Tony Slidini. He did that famous paper balls in the box trick.
Slidini was a genius of attention management. He would use these fluid, curved gestures to guide your eyes away from the trick itself, but his body was the anchor.
He controlled the noise so well that he manipulated exactly where you looked.
He created his own reality because he controlled every single pixel of attention in the room.
Okay, so we have the biology with the vagus nerve, we have the mechanism with mirror neurons and contrast. Now, I want to get to the part that felt the most manipulative, honestly, but also fascinating. The natural negotiation.
You mean dating?
Yes, dating. The sources literally treat mating rituals as a high-stakes negotiation where our biology does all the talking.
It is the most primal negotiation humans do. And the research suggests that high-definition people win this negotiation because they control the signals instead of leaving it to chance.
Let's walk through this still point entry, because this is a tactic anyone listening can try to.
Absolutely. Think about how most people enter a busy bar or a party. They walk in and immediately their eyes start darting around the room. They check their phone, they touch their hair, adjust their shirt.
They're scanning the room for safety.
They look like prey. They are reacting nervously to the environment. The still point strategy is the exact opposite. You enter the room and you simply stop. You become an anchor.
You don't scan. You just let the room settle around you.
Right, and this triggers the orientation response in other people. Humans are hardwired to notice the one thing that isn't moving in a chaotic visual field.
Because it signals confidence.
It signals that you aren't worried about any threats. You naturally become the high-status object in the room almost instantly.
So you got their attention. Now the sources detail these lock-on techniques. And I have to admit, the blink rate capture sounded straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It really does, but it is just neurology. You engage someone in a conversation, you subconsciously match their blink rate first, which we actually do naturally when we like someone.
But then once you were synced up, you intentionally slow your own blinking down.
Right. You drop it to under 10 blinks a minute. And because of that mirror neuron entrainment we talked about, their brain will subconsciously force them to slow their blinking down to match yours.
You are literally hacking their nervous system to calm them down.
You are inducing a state of deep focus. Rapid blinking is a biological distress signal. Slow blinking is a safety signal. You are essentially leading them into a trance state.
That is just wild. And the sources outline the pupillary push.
This involves moving into their intimate zone, which is about 10 inches from their face, but only for a second or two. You aren't trying to kiss them, you are data gathering.
You are looking closely at their pupils.
You are checking for mydriasis, which is pupil dilation. If their pupils dilate when you step in, it is an honest signal of arousal or deep interest. If they constrict, it's a threat response and you should back off immediately.
That brings up the whole honest signal concept. You can fake a smile easily, but you cannot fake your pupils dilating.
Exactly. Just like you can't fake vasocongestion flush. That's the reddening of the ears, neck, or chest when someone is genuinely attracted to you. Or seeing a visible carotid pulse in their neck.
These are biological truths that high-definition presence allows you to clearly read.
Yes, because you aren't distracted by the noise.
The sources also mentioned using a verbal decoy. This made me laugh because it explains why sometimes the coolest, most attractive people you meet say the most boring things.
It is a brilliant strategy. Think about it. If you are doing all this high-intensity eye contact and micro-motion anchoring, and you also try to have a deep, intense philosophical conversation, it's just too much.
It gets overwhelming or even creepy.
It gets way too heavy. So you use a verbal decoy. You talk about the weather or the appetizers. You intentionally keep the conversation low resolution to occupy their conscious mind.
Meanwhile, your body is negotiating directly with their limbic system.
You are boring their prefrontal cortex so you can speak directly to their lizard brain. That is exactly how it works.
All right, let's pivot from love to war, or at least corporate competition. The sources cite a really interesting PubMed study on social hierarchy.
This is crucial because it differentiates between being magnetic and just being a dominant jerk. The study shows that in competitive environments, our brains become hypersensitive to hierarchy cues. We are constantly looking to see who is on top.
And this introduces the big difference between cold stillness and warm stillness.
Right. Cold stillness is what we see in a dominant rival. Think of a cutthroat corporate shark or a Bond villain. It is an exclusionary stillness. hard eyes, tight jaw, rigid.
It signals I am a threat and I am immovable. But that doesn't exactly make people want to collaborate with you.
No, it makes them want to submit or fight you. Warm stillness is very different. It is cooperative dominance. You maintain that exact same absolute physical stillness with no fidgeting, but you add soft eyes.
Meaning you relax the muscles around the eyes.
Yes, you relax the orbicularis oculi muscles, and maybe you add a tiny millimetric head tilt.
Why the head tilt specifically?
Because it subtly exposes the carotid artery. It is a primal biological signal of vulnerability. It subconsciously says, I am so confident in my own safety that I can expose my jugular to you. It strongly invites trust.
And interestingly, the Frontier's source on virtual reality found that this stuff applies even when we aren't physically in the same room.
The co-presence study. This is huge for anyone working remotely or in VR. We tend to think virtual meetings are just about the audio information, but the study found we intensely crave these high-fidelity cues, even in digital spaces.
So even if I am a floating digital avatar, I still need to tilt my head.
If the avatar can transmit those subtle physical cues like gaze direction and head tilt, collaboration actually goes up significantly. The researchers call it co-presence. It is the feeling of truly being with someone.
It perfectly explains Zoom fatigue, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our brains are desperately scanning the screen for micro-emotions like pupil dilation or breath rates that simply aren't there because the video compression kills the detail.
Exactly. We're exhausting ourselves looking for high-definition data in a low-definition feed.
So how do we actually use this in a practical business setting, say an intense negotiation? We have some great insights here from Ed Brodo in the Master Protocol.
The single most powerful tool you have in the boardroom is dynamic silence.
The 6-second pause. I've tried this in meetings, and let me tell you, 6 seconds feels like 6 years.
It feels like an absolute eternity, but that is exactly why it works. The tactic is simple. Someone makes an aggressive offer or asks a completely ridiculous question. You don't argue with them. You don't snap back. You just stop.
You hold the climb.
You hold absolute isometric stillness. You look right at them and you wait. The source material calls it stunned silence. It diffuses aggressive anchors better than any logical argument ever could.
Because they're expecting a fight.
They expect a reaction. When you give them absolutely nothing, they panic. They usually rush to fill the silence, and often they start negotiating against themselves out loud.
They'll say something like, well, obviously we could come down on the price a bit, and you haven't even said a word yet.
Exactly, they just fold. And while you are listening during these negotiations, there is the 70-30 rule.
Listen, 70% of the time.
Yeah.
But the high definition part is maintaining a heavy frame while you do it. What exactly does a heavy frame look like?
Shoulders down and planted. And crucially, absolutely no reflexive nodding. Oh, I'm so guilty of this. The polite I'm listening nod. I look like a dashboard bobblehead sometimes.
We all do it because we think it shows active engagement, but it actually lowers your status. It looks too eager. When you stop nodding at every single sentence, the moment you finally do nod, just a single, slow, deliberate nod, it carries massive weight.
It profoundly validates the speaker.
It becomes a reward. You are dispensing your validation like a precious resource, not just spraying it around the room like a fire hose.
I really love that perspective. And what if you were completely backed into a corner in a deal? The sources suggest using the how question.
This is perfect for when you are stuck. You don't just say no. You look at them and say, how am I supposed to do this?
But the physical delivery matters immensely.
Everything is in the delivery. If you say it with anger, it is challenged. If you say it with what the protocol calls a plaintive tone, meaning zero facial tension and open hands, you aren't fighting them at all.
You are asking them to solve the problem for you. Exactly. You shift the dynamic instantly from interrogation to collaborative problem solving. But it only works if your body is signaling warm stillness. If your body signals aggression, the words won't save you.
This is all amazing, but I'm listening to this thinking I am going to forget all of this the second I get stressed out.
That is why the source material highly recommends habit stacking. You have to train the nervous system offline. You cannot just magically decide to have high-definition presence in the middle of a crisis.
So how do we train it into our daily lives?
The Health News Hub suggests stacking these micro drills onto things you already do every day. For example, practicing ocular softening in the morning.
While brushing your teeth.
Why not? You are staring at yourself in the mirror anyway. Take 10 seconds. Consciously relax the tiny muscles around your eyes. Make your gaze soft. It trains that cooperative, warm stillness so it is readily available when you actually need it.
And they mention grounding during the commute.
It's simple, but highly effective. Feel your feet flat on the floor of the car or train. Feel the full weight of your body settling into the seat. It sounds basic, but it actively engages the vagus nerve.
It lowers that noise floor, so you arrive at work already in a state of isometric neutrality.
Exactly. And for long-term relationships, there is the silent night protocol.
This is to prevent signal decay, right? You know how in long-term relationships you eventually stop really looking at each other? You just shout conversations from the other room.
Yes, we get lazy. This protocol is about intentionally spending time interacting with your partner using only micro-motions. Touch, direct gaze, or just being fully present in the same physical space without speaking a single word.
It reestablishes that high-contrast biological connection. It really is about being intentional with your physical body. We spend so much time carefully curating our emails and text messages, but we're just constantly broadcasting static with our actual physical selves.
We are. High-definition presence is ultimately just about clearing up that biological signal.
Before we wrap up, we absolutely have to mention the technology aspect. This source has talked about Eulerian video magnification.
This completely blew my mind. It is the technological proof of every single thing we have discussed today.
It's a type of software.
It is software that can take a standard video of a person who appears perfectly still to the naked eye, and it amplifies their hidden micromotions. It can reveal the physical pulse beating in your neck.
It can literally show the tiny flush of blood in your cheeks as your heart beats.
Yes, things that are entirely invisible to human sight are suddenly visible on screen. It essentially turns a human face into a readable biological dashboard.
So we are entering an age where these subtle micro-motions are becoming visible, quantifiable data. Machines can actually read our leakage.
It is happening right now, which means genuine authenticity is more important than it has ever been. You cannot fake your heart rate. You cannot fake your pupil dilation.
That is both incredibly cool and slightly dystopian to think about. But it really drives home the central point of all these sources. The body simply does not lie.
It never does. We just need to learn how to properly listen to it and how to control the background noise we are putting out into the world.
So what is the bottom line for you? It seems like the big takeaway from all this research is that we have way more control over our personal impact than we realize.
We truly do. But unlocking it requires doing much less, not more. It requires the strict discipline of stillness.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final provocative thought built on this source material. Something to really test out.
I love it. Let's hear it.
If you stopped moving for just 3 seconds longer than comfortable in your next conversation, your next meeting, or even your next date, what hidden truth would your body leak?
And the real question is, are you brave enough to let it happen?
That really is the question. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
See you next time.